What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel and to this overview of Panflow, the latest plugin from Audiomodern, who have been putting out some amazing stuff over the past few years. And wait for it, this is a freebie. So basically get off this video and go download Panflow now. But if you're still around, I'm going to show you a few interesting things you can do with the plugin that you might have not have thought about. So this video is less of an overview and more of a creative approach to panning. There's a couple of things I want to do with Panflow, but the first thing is going to be widening a synth sound. So this is the melody that I have to work with. Plain Jane sound and a hopefully recognizable melody. It's super mono. I have the goniometer here to kind of show us how mono it is. Straight line, nothing exciting is happening here. And I'm gonna engage Panflow, and I'm also gonna go through the basic elements of the interface, those elements that are actually gonna help me achieve the effect that I'm looking for. So the interface is super easy to understand and use. Let's focus a bit on this lower half here, where you can actually draw your panning lines. You have your left and the upper side and your right and the lower side, and you can draw basically whatever you want here, and you can use these three buttons to decide the shape of that specific line. So if you want it more of a jagged one, you can do that. If you want a curved one, you can do this, and if you want it to be super stepped, you could do this. But let's reset. I'm gonna stick to the default one, and actually I'm gonna use a couple of these two presets here. I'm just gonna do this for now and maybe tune the speed to 1/4 note. So this is kind of basic panning left and right. And a cool thing though that's kind of hidden here is this slider here, which is the threshold of the whole plugin. So it does have a sort of envelope follower, so you can keep it at max and it's going to affect the sound throughout, or you can be a bit more creative with it. And it only pans when it exceeds that threshold, and this will come in handy later. And another option that I'll be using is the feathering, so how intense that panning is going to be perceived, and I'm going to switch to this so you can actually hear it better. It's super choppy if it doesn't have any feathering, and I'm going to play around with the value of this to get some interesting tones. And then obviously it's also wet and dry, which does a lot in helping you achieve a nice mix between a completely panned signal and a mono signal in this case. And let's actually see what's happening if I have it this extreme. So as you can see, it's all over the place. So what I want to do here is to create a bit of a sense of space for that mono synth, with the emphasis on a bit. So we won't go to extremes, even though getting there will sound extreme. So what I'm going to do is set this super fast. At the moment it sounds super unnatural, but bear with me. So you can still hear it, and what I want to do here is actually take this off of sync and raise the tempo. So as you can see, there's some bubbling happening there. It's not necessarily perceivable unless I actually disengage the plugin. It's subtle, but at the same time, it isn't. It creates a really interesting space, a wide space for this synth. And you can actually see it happening as well. And let's try some other shapes. It's really a cool effect, and you don't necessarily need to do anything crazy to make it work. And from a phase perspective, it is more integral than doing some other tricks with the Haas effect, for instance. I highly recommend you experiment with these settings. So focus more on the speed, the sync, and the mix here to get the desired effect. And I found that these two presets, so to speak, are best equipped for the kind of effect that I'm going for here. And in general, it's a good idea to keep this at 100%. You can create a choppier effect, and maybe if you play around with the mix, so something like this. Can work, but you can hear it if you're not careful, and depending on the type of song you're working on, it can be a bit detrimental to the effect that you're going for. But that's my first trick when it comes to using Panflow to create an interesting panning effect to widen your mono synths. And now let's move on to an example that deals with drums and with snares specifically in two different instances. So the first one is actually doing the same thing that we did to the synth, but to a snare sound. So if you have a super mono sound like this, you can add Panflow and make it a bit more exciting. And with this, lowering the value of that feathering helps, because you kind of hear it more as pre-delay, and it gets you a bit into that Haas effect region without causing too much trouble. So you can do this, and you can stereoize a super mono snare, for instance. And finally, and this is less of a trick to widen stuff, but more to make the space that some instruments occupy a bit more exciting, I'm gonna add Panflow to this percussion instrument, and instead of just having it mono, let's add a bit of movement and excitement to this. I'm actually going to lower the number here of BPMs, so you get a bit of a wobble, a slow wobble, and the speed as well. And as you can hear, it kind of moves around. And it moves around in a more exciting fashion than the just plain left to right, or 100% left, 100% right, or 50% left, 50% right. It does this movement because it is a bit out of sync, and you never know exactly where it's going to land, but it is going to land in a place that is going to be exciting and creative and different. Let's have a listen to that in the context of the beat. And if you feel that that's a bit much, what you could do is make sure you click on that button to unselect it, and then limit the distance that this can go left to right. Or if you re-engage this, you can have it lean more towards left. So it's basically going to be kind of wobbling between the middle and the left-hand side, or you can do the opposite. So these are just some of the ways you can use a tool like Panflow, which again is free, to get some interesting variations in your drum sounds, in your beats, and a synth sound, widen it a bit. Same with a snare sound. If you really love a sample but you feel that it's a bit too claustrophobic down the middle, you can widen it, and it just opens up a whole slew of different creative avenues. I have no idea why you wouldn't download this instant. It's free, it's awesome, it's creative, it's purple. So check out Panflow by Audiomodern. It's an amazing plugin, and let me know in the comments below what you thought about these little tricks, and I'll see you next time.